If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as follow me and subscribe to me on all my other social media platforms. What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with another album review for you guys. This is one that I know some people were wondering why I didn't talk about this last month. Well, I wanted to wait until the physical versions came out. I know this came out digitally back in mid-September, but I wanted to wait until the actual release date. So here we are talking about this. It came out on Friday, October 13th. Oh, dear Lord. Jason Voorhees. And we are talking about the latest offering from Canadian death metal upstarts that are just kicking ass right now, Tomb Mold with the Enduring Spirit. So this comes out on 20 bucks spin on Friday the 13th. Ooh. So, yeah. Even though the digital release was back around, like I said, mid-September, but everything else, CD, cassettes, vinyl, whatever the fuck else out there, it's now out on October 13th, Friday the 13th. But with all that said, I have heard some opinions about this album prior to listening to this album, and I think now it's time to dive into it. So kicking things off with The Perfect Memory, Phantasm of Aura. One of the shorter tracks of the album, this is just a little bit over 4 minutes. Right out of the gate, badass drum intro and into these like weird atonal riffs, blast beats, gross bass line. I really have to compliment Arthur Risk for really making the bass kind of shine on its own on this album. Like, even in amongst the visceral onslaught of blast beats and atonal riffs going on here, the bass has its own voice in the mix, which is really fucking cool. Now, this track also, it gets a little bit thrashy at times, and then you immediately get one of the things you're going to hear me saying maybe a little bit on here, quirky melodies, because, dare I say, starting with this track, even with the progressive melodies that come in, this is one of the more melodic things I've heard Tomb Mold do, and also, this is kind of Tomb Mold pushing more towards, dare I say, progressive death metal, because the way these songs are put together feels very progressive and not going verse, chorus, bridge, and all that. But even in some of the melodies and some of the atmospheric parts you get on this album, it gets very progressive at times. Like, even in Angelic Fabrications, which is the shortest track of the album, I think it's about 3.5 minutes. But even here, it's like it starts off rather brutal, and then it even gets into a double-time groove, which that will be another thing that happens quite a bit on this album. And more quirky melodies with blast beats, but you get like a really cool jazzy bass line, kind of like Cynic to some degree. And then out of nowhere, I'm suddenly hearing Cryptopsy riffs and blast beats coming along. Even the Dirk Blast pops up for a couple of measures within the song before it ends with more angular riffing. Will of Whispers, which is really, I think, where that prog influence really starts to infiltrate Tomb Mold sound. Soothing, clean guitars right out of the gate that feels very jazzy, but you still get some like strange dissonant riffs, almost like Demolich to some extent. More of the prog melodies coming along, double time grooves. Even like the leads that pop up here, like this is the first time you get guitar solos. Even these feel more like quick-fire atmospheric leads to kind of accentuate what's going on within the song. And then you get more of those clean, jazzy guitars, again, bringing more of that Cynic vibe. And then a big, like, heroic crescendo at the end with the guitar solos. Flesh is Armor. Well, actually, I skipped over Fate's Tangled Thread. This is one of the more kind of odd tracks of the album, because it starts off with this odd riff that feels like, again, Demolich, But then it turns into Morbid Angel out of nowhere, like Morbid Angel riffs and rhythms, but it still feels very quirky. Some triplet chugs coming along, double time grooves, doomy breakdown. Like, this is one of the first times you really get like a real true blue breakdown on the album, and it feels more doom laden than anything else. And then you get some amazing leads on here that are proggy, but even a lead that comes up here, it almost made me think, is this what the Pac-Man video game would sound like if it was guitars instead of the 8-bit arcade noise, whatever the hell? But then the final lead on the track brings in another influence I kind of picked out here. Some John Petrucci-inspired guitar solos. Like, this is one of 2 times within the album I kind of picked up on that. Now we get to Flesh's Armor, where it's just probably the most tech death-oriented song. Like, it's just absolute chaos with these riffs and even some cool, like, tapping melodies, triplet chugging swings, nasty angular riffs, dissonance, double time, quirk, strange weirdness going on. But it's very tech death forward, I would say. And then Servants of Possibility. This track almost has more of a melodic death metal vibe to it, like in some of these riffs, like the opening riff and thrashy rhythm made me think of like classic Gothenburg melodeath, like At the Gates, Soilwork, bands along those lines. But again, more atonal melodies coming along. You get another cool breakdown with some cool leads on top. And then even when the double time groove kind of settles in here, the leads are harmonized, which both the guitar players showcase their talents quite well throughout this album when it comes down to riffs and solos. And then there's even like a clean guitar line that feels very 80s, I guess. And then it even has like this cool like rocking lead at the very end. But then we get into the big track, which is over 11 minutes, The Enduring Spirit of Calamity. Boy, there's a lot of influence going on here. Like, I could pretty much name off all the influences I can hear on this track. You have Bolt Thrower, Decapitated, Demolich, Opeth, Swallow the Sun, Pink Floyd, and Dream Theater. Like, kind of like mash all those bands together, you get this track. Now, where I tell the Bolt Thrower influence is in the beginning with this double time stomp, but it has more of that prog flair and melody to it. Again, more dissonant melodies come along. Nice, awesome triplet chug section, but with an odd, quirky melody on top. And then even some time signature shifts to really lay into that prog influence. But then you get this one triplet blast section that brings in the Decapitated vibe, but with those, like, weird Demolich melodies. But then you even get, like, this cool brief swing that feels like Opeth. And then the jazzy, clean guitars and bass comes in that brings out that Dream Theater vibe. And then you even get, like, a doomy, clean section that made me think of Swallow the Sun. Now, again, John Petrucci-inspired guitar solos coming along with great melody, great atmosphere. Really, you can really feel these guitar solos on this track. And then there's even another lead that, dare I say, if David Gilmour heard one of these guitar solos on this track, he'd probably blush and come at the same time. I guarantee that, because of the dark atmosphere, the melodies, the feeling again. And then I like how towards the end the tempo picks up while the leads continue. And it ends with this, like, huge epic crescendo before it ends at the very end on a brutal, thrashy death metal note. So it was just, like, so many twists and turns, not only on this track, but in the entire album. Now, I heard people say this is very proggy and kind of odd, and I was a big fan of the last album, Planetary Clairvoyance. I think I reviewed that when it came out in 2019. If not, then I am ashamed. But yeah, this is definitely a very different release from Tomb Mold. Granted, there's still a lot that makes it feel like Tomb Mold with how nasty it sounds and the vocals being as putrid as they are and the cavernous vibes of it. But there are so many new tools in this toolbox, like the progressive influence, some of the mellow def kind of coming along, some jazzy sections, some tech def parts. It just goes all over the map. Like, definitely the most experimental and ambitious album from TwoMold up to this point. And of course, like I said, the production. Like, the production is nice and gritty, but the mix is fantastic. Like I said, Arthur Risk, amazing job with the mix on here, especially for the bass, because so many moments where you get these cool, like, bass lines. Like, even at the end of The Enduring Spirit of Calamity, as you get one more guitar solo with melody, there's a nice bass melody that kind of breaks it up a little bit. Like, everybody in the band was just on point when it came to the musicianship and the songwriting here. So if I had to think of any complaints at all, I mean, I guess, and I don't think it's really a complaint, it's just more of a thing. It's just different. It's a very different album for TwoMold, whereas in the past, they were always about brutal, cavernous insanity. This is still cavernous and insanity and brutal at times, but there's so much more to it. And for those reasons, 10 out of 10. I'm just going to leave it at that because words cannot do this album justice. I mean, it's strange, but it's strange in a good way. Not in the sense of, like, say, that new Avenged Sevenfold album where you're just left like, what the fuck happened to me? This, it's like, it's strange, but it's in an endearing sense. And I'm mind blown. I really, really am as to, like, how many twists and turns going on here. Kind of like that new Horrendous album, I will say. It's kind of in that vein, except this is a little more out of the box for TwoMold. Whereas with Horrendous, you kind of figured they would kind of go in that direction on the new album based off Idol. But, yeah, 10 out of 10. I have no issues at all, but I'm just still like, holy cow. But anyways, those are just my thoughts. What did you guys think of The Enduring Spirit by TwoMold? Let me know in the comments below, and until next time, keep your horns high and your dreams wet.